Mr. Zimbelman's World Cultures class today. They were discussing the Punic Wars. Okay, our objective is trying to understand the causes and participants in Rome's war against Carthage and the Phoenicians. Okay, so first thing you need to know is that Carthage is a Phoenician city located in northern Africa. Okay, if you haven't done so already, you need to label that in your notebooks. Okay, Carthage is right here. So our box for our map is right here. Carthage is in the bottom left-hand corner or the southwestern corner of your map in northern Africa, right there. Okay. Punic, the reason these are called the Punic Wars is because Punic is Latin for Phoenician, which is where the Carthaginians came from. They came from this area over here called Phoenicia and migrated and created a new settlement, according to Greek mythology, with Queen Dido in Carthage. Okay. Now, the Punic Wars were a series of three separate wars fought between Rome and Carthage across the Mediterranean Sea that lasted over 100 years. Okay. They were fought for these three main reasons. Okay. Control over the islands of the Italian peninsula, control over the Mediterranean Sea and their trade, and the Carthaginian wealth and Rome's jealousy, because the Carthaginians were extremely wealthy. Okay. Now, the first Punic War. This highlighted fighting breaking out over the island of Sicily, which we've seen fighting break out over Sicily before with the Greeks and the Phoenicians fighting over Sicily in the city of Syracuse. But Hamilcar Barca, who's the leader of the Carthaginians, okay, he leads an army against the Romans. And a navy against the Romans for control of the island of Sicily. Okay. Carthage is a very strong army and navy, and at the time, Rome didn't have a very strong army and a very weak navy. Okay. In Rome's army, they had legionnaires, and they categorized all of their soldiers into legions, which was about 4,200 professional soldiers. Um, We'll worry about this character challenge if you're in class today. But during the First Punic War, okay, Rome built about 120 triremes to try and take on the Carthaginian navy. And Rome claimed victory in almost every single one of their naval battles because of modeling their ships after the Greeks. Okay. And in 241 BCE, Hamilcar Barca finally has to surrender to the Romans. And so Rome wins control of the islands of around the Italian peninsula, so Sicily, Corsica, and Sardinia. And it was all doing thanks to the Corvus. Okay, the Corvus was this bridge right here that allowed Romans to pull up next to their ships, drop it, and invade enemy ships, so they didn't have to ram them. Okay, so this is what Rome looked like after the First Punic Wars get over. Okay, Sicily, Sardinia, and Corsica will become Rome's after the First Punic Wars. Okay. Rome now forces Carthage to pay reparations for the destruction caused by the war. Um, and Hamilcar goes on a conquest to acquire a lot more money to pay Roman reparations. And Hamilcar eventually moves to the city of Barcelona in Spain, which was over here. It's not marked on this map over here, but he establishes a new city called Barcelona, and that is the result of the Punic Wars. Okay, so this is what Roman territory looks like after the First Punic War. They gain control of these three islands of Sicily. Syracuse is still controlled by the Greeks. Okay, and then Hannibal Barca. We have the blood oath taken by young Hannibal and his son Hamilcar. After Hamilcar is defeated, um, he makes his son swear a blood oath to try and take revenge on the Romans for his defeat in the First Punic Wars. And so the Second Punic Wars begin over a grudge held by the Barca family and the Carthaginians. So the Second Punic War gets kicked off in 218 BCE when Hannibal attacks southern Spain. Okay, Rome had some settlements out here and were spreading this way, and so Hannibal, to try and head them off and stop the spread of Roman colonies, he invades these colonies and conquers them quickly. Okay, and Hannibal takes a bunch of war elephants from Africa, trains them, and brings them into Europe, and he tries to invade the Roman peninsula. As you can see right here, this is the track of Hannibal's uh, route through Spain, France, and then eventually into Italy. And he takes these elephants out, and he is destroying the Roman army all along this entire way, winning battles right and left. And finally, Scipio, in a strategic moves, they leave Rome They take all their army, they leave Rome, and they head right for Carthage because Hannibal and his army were over here in the Italian peninsula. And so to draw them out of the Italian peninsula and back to their home territory, Scipio, who's Scipio Africanus from the song, leads Hannibal and his army back to northern Africa. And they claim victory in the Battle of Zama, thus successfully defeating the Carthaginians for a second time. And Hannibal afterwards flees to Asia Minor. And so the results of this war leads to Rome acquiring the Iberian Peninsula and the remaining islands of the Western Mediterranean Sea. So this is what the Roman Empire looks like after the Second Punic War is over. Carthage is still controlled by the Phoenicians, but they now have Sicily, Sardinia, Corsica, and Hispania. Okay, and now the Romans are starting to turn their eyes to the Macedonians as well. Because if you remember, this is the end of the Macedonian era. The Macedonians were strong during Alexander the Great, which would have been about 100 years prior to this. Okay. Now, during the Third Punic War, Cato the Elder, who was a senator in Rome's Senate, warned the Romans about Carthage's wealth after visiting, because he visited the city of Carthage, and told them that, like, they've got enough money, they're going to build up a new army, and they're going to try and invade again. Okay. And so Rome declared that the city of Carthage should be abandoned, and the city of Carthage obviously declares war with them. And then Rome's goal in this war was the total destruction of the city of Carthage, to try and wipe them off the face of the planet for one last time. So in 149 BCE, the Romans set sail for Africa and the city of Carthage, and they place it under siege, and fighting goes on for 3 separate years. During those 3 separate years, there is constant struggle to try and get inside the city walls of Carthage. And eventually, in 146, Rome finally forces Carthage to surrender, and Carthage is officially added as a province. Okay, a province is a new territory of Rome, and a provincial is somebody from a province of Rome. Now, also simultaneously, the Macedonian Wars, which we learned about in Greece, were happening, and so this is all for later, guys. Okay, so don't worry about any of this. But because the Macedonian Wars come to an end at that point in time, at the exact same year, they end and Greece also gets added. So this is the map of Rome at the end of the Punic Wars and the Macedonian Wars. And that is all that we got for today. So make sure that you get all of your notes taken down, all the vocab words written out in your notes, and be prepared for the next round of stuff in class.